And I felt the need. I had to put the man bun up for this one. It's
That
how I've been depicted.
That's how you're depicted, yeah.
Yes.
Although I didn't wear my Carhartt, which is what I'm wearing in the picture.
Shame.
I was looking for it. All right. Well, we're live.
Okay.
That's perfect.
All right. So, how about you introduce yourself? Just the short version, because I mean you're on our social media feed, and if people want to know, then they can look into your stuff. So,
I'm Todd Black. I write comics, and yes, this is my real hair. You'd be surprised how many. I was like, "Is your hair real? Why would I wear a wig?" Like, come on.
Stranger things have
This is
happened.
That's perfect. So you have how many series?
Many
that you're doing right now.
Yeah. Let's see. How many have I made? Let's see. Guardians, Home, 10,000 Miles was a one-off. Secrets of Science, Tokyo Blade Detectives, which is the ones you guys like. I wrote Thunder Rosa autobiography miniseries. I got a Five Bullet Six Man, which is another graphic novel, and I got Sherlock Holmes mystery novel. So I guess that's 8, I suppose. And I'm working on 9 right now.
I was gonna say 8 so far.
Yeah, 8 so far. Oh yeah, there's more. There is more coming. So
it's fantastic. So I might ask about the past ones. Michael's the one who's more familiar with your work.
Ask whatever you want.
But I'm good at asking questions.
By all means.
So do you just like have the idea and go for it? Like where do these come from? You know?
Oh, they come from everywhere. That's just the honest truth. Every single one of my series has their own different origin stories. For example, the one I love telling Tokyo's the most because it's the most hilarious. I thought of Tokyo Blade Detectives because of a Facebook meme. Okay, yeah, he's just like, how is that possible? Okay, so you know those memes where it's like you use the first letter of your first name, first letter of your last name, those kinds of ones. Well, I went on to Facebook one day like years ago, and it was, "What is your anime title?" I'm like, okay, I like anime, so why not? So it's first letter of your first name, T, first letter of your last name, B, and last letter of your first name, D. So I looked it up, and it was Tokyo Blade Detectives. I'm like, okay. And I was just like, at the time, the first Deadpool movie had just come out. And in that movie is the line, "Deadpool sounds like a franchise." So I was just like, okay, that's a great line. So I just typed, "Tokyo Blade Detectives sounds like a franchise." Hit enter, and I left the page. Nothing more. And a few hours later, I got a comment saying, "Yeah, that actually does sound like a franchise, so you should do that." I'm like, okay. So I'm like, okay, I'm looking at the name, and I go, okay, so Tokyo, obviously in Japan, detectives, modern day, Blade. Why is there blades in a modern day Tokyo? And that's when the tagline came in a land where guns are outlawed, only the blade can rule. And the moment I said that, my mind went boom, and all the ideas started pouring out. And so that one was so profound in the ideas that I actually had to write it down. I usually never have to write it down because I can remember everything. But I had to write that one down. And I didn't sadly just go for it. I wanted to. I wanted to. I had other projects in the works at the time. I have a queue, if you will, in my head of like, okay, this series is next, and this one. Because it's about time, effort, money, the right artist, et cetera, et cetera. But many times it's just, okay, what's the next one I should do? What one can I do that's different? Like, for example, I actually have a second anime idea that I would totally love to do, but I'm doing Tokyo right now, and I don't want to, flood the market, if you will. So I'm doing a different series right now instead. But I will get to it eventually. And
well, in the Tokyo Blade Detectives, like between 5, 6, and 7, picks up a lot. So we need to start getting through that arc so I can get some answers.
Yeah. Like, this is Tokyo is special to me because it's my second, technically my third, I guess, ongoing series alongside Guardians and Secrets of Science. But this one I am structuring to like go as long as possible because I want this to become an anime one day. And like that's the dream. That's the dream. And that was the other reason it took a while to get off the ground, was because I needed the right artist, because I wanted someone who could like do the anime style, do it well, have it like really great action scenes and all that. And that's where I found Lam Vuvan on Facebook of all places. I found a lot of Facebook artists, for better and for worse. Okay. I kid you not, I was testing someone for a new series, and I had them do a test image, which I always do. and it just wasn't working out. And like this guy was like not listening to me about the changes I wanted and what I wanted him to do. And I was like, hey, I just, we should just stop now. Miscommunication's too much. And he goes, I think you're making a big mistake, but that's okay. Like, really? That's never something you want to say to your potential boss. You're making a huge mistake, but that's okay. Like, all right.
Yeah. It's usually a red flag.
Yeah. Well, for me, they tell us to, like, all artists and protective writers, it's about a feeling. Like and I'm actually having that kind of issue right now with an artist I'm testing out, is that, I've got to have a feeling like this will work. They'll listen to me. They'll take initiative on their own in some cases, but you want to have a good relationship with who you're making comics with. Otherwise, it's just going to be a slog and painful. I'm like, oh, they're still not doing what I want. So if I don't get that initial feeling like, oh yeah, I trust this person to make this comic idea, I'm not going to use you. So
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, in Tokyo Blade Detective, it really shows, because the action scenes definitely, like, it's going to go in the action scenes, just like the way it's seen and the how it's drawn just pops. So like you get the dialogue and like the story moving, and then there's like pop action scene, and like stands out in the way that the comics flow, which is really fun. Because like when you're in an action, because like in animes you get usually like a cued song. It has a very similar like bookend thing where like the action starts and it's got like a certain vibe to it, and when it ends, like how it's drawn switches, so you can like kind of tell when you're like fully in it. It's pretty cool.
Thank you.
I've been enjoying it.
Thank you. I'm glad you have. But,
yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. And trust me, I wish it had songs that would play as you read it. That would be awesome. Yeah. One day,
just put a QR code next to it. Just
that'd be hilarious. Just have the playlist with it. Yes.
Like, listen to the epic fight music as you're reading. It's like, or it could be like those old like children's book read-alongs. Turn the page.
Perfect. Oh, I love that. Or you could have the little plastic doodad with like all the buttons on it.
Okay.
Press number 2 for battle sequence.
Yeah. Press 3 for epic sword clash.
Yes.
You can just sell like a strip of them, right? Because then you can use them with each of the comics.
I think so. There's an idea. So let me ask you, Todd, in your research or just imagination for all this, what did you know previously? Do you know much about Tokyo swordsmanship and crime solving?
Crime solving. Well, well, with Tokyo, I will say I did a lot more research than I usually do, because I wanted this to be my love letter to Japan and all that it's given my life, because I am an anime guy, both when I was younger and now that I actually have like a lot of streaming services I can hitch onto. I've been catching up on the animes that I've missed, like Yu Yu Hakusho. I just watched
Gold.
Yeah, Gold. Weird ending, didn't like it, but everything up to that final arc is great. Isn't that like always the way these days? It's like
it's always
everything.
The way.
Like
I know. Michael and I talk about that with Hunter x Hunter all the time.
Oh yeah, I've heard Hunter x Hunter. Yeah,
yeah.
It's like Red.
You're not a huge fan of the final arc there.
Because it leaves the whole rest of the story. Oh, it upsets me.
Yeah.
But that's another. That's another discussion.
Don't get me started on these kinds of rants, because I can go off. But right. I wanted to honor everything that I had known about Japan and the mark that it's left. So like every major faction has a direct tie to Japan in one form or another. So for example, the Nine Tails, which is the current arc, they are referenced to, of course, the Nine-Tailed Fox, which is like Naruto, and yokai. We've got the terrorist group, who are the yokai, which are our terrorists. The Empress is a reference to WWE wrestler Asuka, who's the Empress of Tomorrow. And I totally didn't put her in because I have a total crush on her. Totally did not. Absolutely not. She can break me in half any day of the week, and twice on Sunday. But the Ronin, that's a reference kind of like to Shredder, along with the Ronin mythology of samurai without a master. We will see samurai later on in the series, maybe next arc. You never know. And so on and so forth. I have references to Pokemon, to Digimon, to every major thing.
The ninja bit got me good. I didn't see it coming.
Oh, yeah. So. That was. You gotta have fun sometimes, It's like, okay, so all right, so I got like yokai, they're like smoky and they're terrorists. Awesome. I got the Nine Tails, like this deadly assassins. I'm like, where are the ninjas? I'm like, what's the most opposite thing I could do for ninjas? And I'm like, let's make them a delivery service.
That's fantastic.
And I even throw that line with Miko. It's like, I remember hearing about how ninjas used to be cool. Like, everyone has to evolve, Miko. That's not the way you evolve. And honestly, I could I have thought of something to do with, like, more drastic to do with ninjas? Maybe, but, like, everyone has, like, super ninjas. Like, that's half the point. Everyone has, like,
Mhm.
that epic, like, super ninja where it's like, Ninja Gaiden or even Shredder to a lesser extent,
Right,
like
right.
the TMNT, everyone's got, like, how can we make ninjas cooler? I'm like, how can we not make them cooler?
But
Got
it makes sense too. I love that
yeah.
concept. Ninjas as just a delivery
And
service.
it
That's
works
fantastic.
because it's
It
like,
really is.
Yeah,
It really does work.
it's a really good
it's
bit.
like delivering packages faster than you could say poof.
Right.
I just love
That's
that.
amazing.
And like that just came to me. That was not like super planned. I was like, what can I do with ninjas? Let's make them delivery service. I just love that visual and Lom rendered it perfectly. Just press a button, poof, here's a ninja. So goes good times. And the Tao is actually referenced to Taoism, which originated in China but came to Japan, which is why you see it in many anime, including Digimon, season 3, Taomon. Uh, Sakuyamon was actually the reference of Rika in the Ninetales. That's why I named her Rika after the tamer. So all these references, I just wanted to honor Japan all I can and reflect its history while also making some of my own. So
Sure.
That's fantastic.
So maybe diving like farther back, how did you get into comics? Like, what was your first experience with them? Like the transition to wanting to make your own?
okay, so my comics journey is definitely not typical for someone who's in my position now. I didn't read comics until I was like 18. And it's not because I didn't want to. I didn't have a store near me, or so I thought.
Mm.
I would go as I was I'll always remember I was on IGN and there was an article about Marvel's Dark Reign event. It was just about to start. And I'm like, that sounds interesting. And I'm like, oh yeah, Norman Osborn's taken over America basically. I'm like, okay. This had just happened after Secret Invasion, which sadly I missed out on. By the way, Secret Invasion TV show sucks. The rant I can do about that is long, but I won't do that here. So I'm like, this actually sounds like a great concept. Like, I wish I had a comic book store near me. So I did what any kid, 18-year-old kid, did in that day. I went to the phone book. I am that old. That's exactly what I did. And I'm like, comics, comics, comics. Oh my gosh, there's actually one right near my community college. So I found it, and the first comic I got was Dark Reign #1, the one shot that kickstarted the whole event. And then I read Thunderbolts. Battle for the Cowl with Batman had just started, or was like right about to happen. So that was a great transition point. And I just started from there. And the more I read, it was just like, my gosh, these stories are so great. And I grew up on Batman the Animated Series, X-Men Animated Series, Justice League, all the good stuff. And it's just on good stuff, just saying. You people know what I'm talking about, Uh,
Hmm.
so I
Hmm.
grew up on this stuff, and I'm just like, so superheroes have always been part of my life. And so eventually, I was in high school, and I'm writing these stories of like what my own superhero movie franchise would be. This was before the MCU, technically, and I was loving these stories, and I started reading comics. I'm like, man, I wish I could just develop this into this. It'd be great. So I go into C2E2, my very first Comic Con in Chicago, and there's a panel there. They host it almost every year called "Breaking into Comics the Marvel Way." And at the time, Matt Fraction was doing a very good run on Invincible Iron Man, and I asked him straight up, I was like, "Hey, I'm a writer. I had this I feel it's a great idea. How do I get into comics?" He goes, "Okay, look, if you want to get into comics, find an artist and make comics." Okay,
You, you don't say.
you don't say. Uh, Fast forward 2 years, and I actually started because apparently this is not well talked about in the comic community. You need money to make comics.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Concept.
it's the best kept secret, isn't
I
it? You need
know.
money to pretty much start anything.
Yeah, I know.
It's
So
amazing.
I had to get a really well paying job when I was out of college, so I needed one anyway. And I made the first issue of Guardians #0 because I had seen a bunch of Zero issues from DC, and I was like, this is the perfect idea, go with the prologue for #1. And we made 3 issues, and then I went broke because apparently, if you spend more money than you make, you don't have money to spend anymore. Lessons for life, ladies and gentlemen. That's not a joke. That actually did happen. So I had to wait a couple months to refill my stockpile, if you will. Then I worked out a deal with my longtime artist Alex Garcia, and we continued on with Guardians. We made 20 issues of that, and then eventually I was just like, I need to do something else. Not because Guardians was bad. I could have gone on forever, but I was just like, I was seeing all these other comics, and I'm like, I like other franchises, and I like other genres. You know, what else can I do? And at the time, Oni Press, which is still alive today, they were doing this contest of, you know, pitching an idea to them, and they might publish it. The only rules were no superheroes, which forced me to change my perspective, and it has to be a miniseries or a one-shot graphic novel. So I pitched them two ideas. One was this Home was originally this grand scale multiversal adventure, and it was like, you know, massive sprawling epic. Then they're like, no, more than 6 issues. I'm like, okay, smaller scale, but smaller. And I pitched it to them. They didn't accept it. I also pitched a Disney Pixar style adventure called 10,000 Miles. They didn't accept that either. So I'm like, screw it, I'll do it myself. Go to Thanos route. Fine, I'll do it myself. And
I mean,
that's how I got
yeah.
into Kickstarter, which has been a godsend for me.
Mm.
Funded everything, all 5 issues of Home, funded 10,000 Miles, and then I did some other things on my own and through other people. And then I went back to Kickstarter for Tokyo, which have had 7 Kickstarters successfully, and hopefully 8 starting October 1st. Just to give you guys a heads up. And I've been just cranking away ever since, one project at a time,
Nice.
sometimes 2
Now,
if I'm lucky.
was Kickstarter a learning
Oh my
curve?
God,
Like, because
yes.
that's you got to become a salesman all of a
Well,
sudden, you
it's
know?
not just that. It's Kickstarter. Okay, even back then, Kickstarter was tricky because it's easy to say, "Oh, I have a great idea," but I gotta get you to pledge to my idea. When I
Mm.
did my very first, this is not a joke, I did a Kickstarter for $500 called The Next Stan Lee, and the whole point was for people to give me money so that I could make comics because I felt I was the next Stan Lee. Clearly, I was not arrogant in my college years at all. No, definitely not. So then I'm like, okay, this was really bad, and like it remains. You can find it on there. It's bad. I didn't get a single dollar, and I'm glad. I'm glad. Like that's the reality check I needed. And so I slowly started to build myself up, and uh, it was just hard because even when I had with Guardians, I had the first 3 issues done, and then I did a Kickstarter for 4 and 5. And even though I had full issues, I didn't get it funded. And I was like, that's so weird. And then I pitched like a bigger grand scale project, and I got money, but not enough. So I failed. So I failed like my first 3 Kickstarter projects. I went all in on Home. And I was just like, I was doing everything. I brought a cosplayer friend to do it so she could do like a variant cover and cosplay pics, which worked in ways I did not intend, but that's another story entirely. Let's just say cosplay fans are sometimes a bit weird. Yeah. Uh, all the stories I could tell. I legit had a friend get mad at me because of one of the cosplay pics, and it's oh, I'll never forget the conversation. But I was like, okay, I got to do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. And I legit thought I had a scammer on that Kickstarter because they pledged $625 to a $500 reward. Who does that? You know, I was like, okay, this guy's gonna cancel like right at the last hour, and I'm screwed. Thankfully, it went through. Then we got the other 4. By the time 10,000 Miles remains my highest grossing Kickstarter, and I really don't know why. Okay, it was a
That's the other thing that nobody talks about is sometimes it's sheer dumb
it
luck
is.
that you're getting off the
Yeah,
ground.
I mean, it could have been that it was because it was a one shot, so people didn't feel like, oh, I'm going to invest a lot in it. It's just like, oh, and it was a kid's story. Maybe they resonate with the Disney Pixar style. I really don't know, but that was my first Kickstarter where I got over 100 backers, and we got like $3,300 or something like that. And I was asking for 2,500, so that wasn't that bad. That was pretty good. And like that's the high mark for me. And then Tokyo, we've averaged about 100 backers, give or take, 95 to 100, which I'm grateful for. So it's always a process. And for me, I arguably have gotten a little complacent because I'm like, oh yeah, these rewards will work. And then I realize like, okay, wait a minute. If they've pledged that much before, they don't need that reward again. So now they're going to pledge less. That happened to be the last Kickstarter, which was, I'm pretty sure, the lowest that Tokyo's ever gotten, which was still successful, but it wasn't, you know, like a lot of extra wiggle room, if you will. So it's always a learning curve, and there's always something you can do. And then when I look at other comic Kickstarters and they're making like tens of thousands of dollars, I'm like, what are they doing differently than me? I'm like, oh, they're doing all these variant covers, they're doing, you know, special like collectibles. I know a buddy who does like buttons and pins. I've never been into that personally, and I'm the kind of guy who's like, if I don't have to spend that much money on that extra stuff, I'll just not do that because I feel that I know what people want, like digital comics, bundles of digital comics, getting drawn into the comic, like with you two. Uh, but you got to try stuff. And for my next project, Crusader Mysteries, I might go bigger, depending on the goal I have to hit or whatever. But you're always learning something with Kickstarter because you're just like, oh, I'm doing well. I'll totally do that the next time. Maybe not, or maybe you will. You never know. So
I love that. So are you so this learning curve kind of on the Kickstarter deal
yeah.
and marketing and all that stuff you've
Mm.
had to do that you just talked about, uh is it all experiential learning for you, or do you actually like, do you hop on YouTube or read books on, marketing strategies and that kind of stuff? How does that work
Yeah,
for you?
full transparency, I suck at marketing. I suck so bad. I've like screwed myself over on multiple marketing things. And sometimes it's just how the algorithms work. I'll give you an example. Today I posted a comic page for my new project on Facebook. I did it at a good time, or I felt it was a good time. And I've gotten like 4 likes maybe, and 3 of them were for family members. But then, like 2 days ago, I just posted a very vague statement about a project that might be happening, and I got like 20 likes. I'm like, what the heck? What? And it wasn't even a picture. It was just like one of those like default background images you could put on. Like, what the heck? And Twitter's not much better, especially since a certain someone has taken over. And I'll get like random people, mainly bots, liking my post. And there are other people who do it better. Absolutely. I'm trying to build it up my own way. Newsletter is a big thing. I've been using a friend of mine's technique to get people at Comic Cons to sign up for my newsletter. And if you build enough of them, eventually some of them are going to pledge to your stuff. And it's a long haul kind of process, but it's one I think will work. There are many ways you can handle marketing. There's a person I know who has had multiple successful Kickstarters, and he likes to post about these books that's like the $1 make a marketing plan or something like that. And there's another book he does, and those those can work, but they also might not. It's the internet, it's people's attention spans, it's so many things that could go right, could go wrong. You never know, but you have to at least try. And I do need to try harder, and I am trying in my own ways, like with the newsletter. But it is absolutely, you know, testing yourself, asking what works, asking what doesn't, seeing how other people are doing it. There are people who specialize in marketing, which I will totally tap into for some of my future projects. But some of it is no, please. I was just saying, like it's a lot of trial and error. Yeah, yeah. And I'll give you a great example with Tokyo versus 10,000 Miles. I've always been amazed that I haven't gotten more backers with Tokyo because of the popularity of manga and anime out there. And it could be that they're just not on Kickstarter, or I'm not reaching them within my circles, if you will, or I'm not going on to the right shows and advertising to them. Because if you don't like anime, you're probably not going to like Tokyo. So if you're, as distinctly like a fantasy person, you see Tokyo, you might be like, that looks kind of cool, but it's not really my thing, and that's totally fine. But then when you look at 10,000 Miles, I think I hit a niche there where it's like this is a children's book on Kickstarter, so that reaches out to kids, teenagers, parents, anyone who likes Disney Pixar, which is a lot. And listen, this was during like the prime of Pixar before Disney screwed it over. And so that's like people saying like, "Oh yeah, that looks like a good book. That's a good one-off story I could give to my kids." And I, when I go to cons, there are plenty of parents that go, "Oh, is this like a Disney Pixar story that I could totally read that to my kids?" I'm like, "Yes, please buy it, read it to your children." So it's about reaching that community. And with Kickstarter, there are comic readers out there, obviously, but there are also ones who are looking for specific kinds of comics. And if you don't fit that market, you're not going to get it. And other times, there are like big comic creators. Like Jimmy Palmiotti is a great example. He does multiple books on Kickstarter, massively successful. And it's not just because of the content it's because he's Jimmy Palmiotti. And he has that reputation of, oh, I worked with Marvel, I've worked with DC. My books will be good. And that carries weight. So the only wage I have is in my hair. So
And Weird Al beat you a long time ago. I'm sorry.
I know. I know.
Yeah, and I mean it's really hard to get out there. I mean, I never looked at the price of a booth at like conventions these days, but it is you need money.
Yeah.
You
I can give you some numbers. I just applied to C2E2 2024, and they said that the booth for an Artist Alley booth will be $475. Planet Comic Con, which is in Kansas City, that one's about 400 if I recall correctly. Grand Rapids was less than 300, I'm pretty sure. Going to New York, which is in less than 2 months, that's well over 500. And that's of course not counting the hotels, traveling costs, buying all the product you need to sell at the table. The prices add up. So, and then we add that to just the price of making a comic books. It's not easy to make this stuff, let alone make it look good and market it. That's why Kickstarter is so valuable to some people.
Absolutely, yeah. So anyone listening, when you're at those cons and you see all the cutesy booths with their pins and keychains and pillows and all that, like they sacrificed a lot to be there. You don't have to buy their stuff; just respect what they're doing.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's just because there's so much stuff. Because everybody wants to usually buy as much as they can, but
yeah, I definitely went into some credit card debt last anime convention I went to.
No, it's you hit the nail on the head. At times, there's just so much stuff. Like for C2E2, they usually, exception of last year for some reason, they have A to Z of rows. And in those rows, you will find industry professionals, both higher tier, mid tier, etc. You'll find the indie guys like me. You'll have the what's called the fan artists who just draw really epic pictures of the characters you love, and people will buy that in droves. You'll have the occasional novel person, and then you'll have the people who are selling like your knickknacks and doodads and your fan service stuff, and they're all welcome into Artist Alley as they should be. But who gets what purchase depends on how you can get them to your table. Can you keep them at your table? And are they willing to buy your stuff now versus the oh so classic line, I'll be back around? I hate that line. I hate it so much. I hear it all the time and I'm like, no, you're not. And then when someone actually does come back, I'm like, oh, you actually came back. So, but it's a process. And that's another thing I've had to learn from experiences. How do I bring people to my table? How do I compete with all these other people that are around me? And I've evolved techniques to do that. My personal favorite is I call the Vanna, and I'll like lock eyes with someone.
Do explain. Yeah,
Yeah.
tell me.
So
Tell
like
me all
here's
this right now.
the table. So I usually stand. I don't like to sit because I'm a writer. I want to engage with people. Now, if you're an artist and you want to draw, that works for you because they know that you're drawing. Me, I want to stand up because I'm a tall guy and like engage with people. And then when I lock eyes with them, I'll like motion to the comics and the books for the simple reason that it'll get a reaction every time. Sometimes it's like, it's okay, or oh, that's haha, that's funny, and then other times like, yeah, no, whatever, why not? Let's go check this guy out. Happens all the time, but I didn't do that before. Before it was just like standing around hoping they'll come to my table. But if you can engage with them and say like, oh, it gets them to come, and if they don't buy it, that's someone who at least attempted to look at your stuff, which is more than you would have gotten if they just walked on by. I have gotten many sales because of the Vanna, and it's because I'm not kidding at that. I was at Planet Comic Con, and I was just keep my eyes on the people going by, and this one lady had a supernatural shirt on, and that's another thing I'll talk about in a second. But I was like, she locked eyes with me, and I went like, oh, and she's like, okay, she was like 10 feet away from me when I did the Vanna, but she walked all the way back to the table. She heard my pitches and she bought $5 of comics. And I'm like, that's $5 I did not have before. And it matters.
And all you had to do was this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then going back to the Supernatural shirt, that's the second thing. If you could connect with them on a fan level or on anything that you think that they're emotionally connected to, that'll get you to the table. I have lied about my love of sports teams just because it got them to my table. Like, oh, hey, go Patriots.
Absolutely.
Patriots suck, but it might get you to my table, so I'm going to love the Patriots for those 10 seconds. So,
no, we're in Wisconsin. I know next to nothing about the Packers, but I mean, you just smile and nod and people are friends with you.
It's like, hey,
I'm more of an
Yeah, go pack,
I'm more of an
go.
antagonist.
Yeah, you're right.
I just go, I love sports ball, and that usually doesn't work, but it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're touching on a really good point here of most. So I went to music school.
Okay.
I'm a musician.
Nice.
And thank you. And you know, it's not talked about very much, whether you go to school for it or not, of any kind of artistic, creative endeavor. You have to be good at the thing, but you also got to be good at talking about and showing people the thing. Because you can be the best in the world at it, but nobody knows you're, you're the starving one.
Yeah, very much.
I used to have a recording studio, and that's always the trouble I have with recording artists. They're like, yeah, I'm just going to make it, and people are going to love it. I'm like, but how are they going to know about it? Like, but people don't talk about that whole, the business side of
Yeah,
things.
and
Right? So you can make something great, but unless you just get lucky, which does happen, but there's so much work goes into either running social media pages or connecting to networks and communities. Like, it's a slog just to like stay active outside of the actual creating, which is its own monumental task.
Right. So props to you, Todd, for just all the, because you talk about your failures. You're straight up about your failures.
Oh yeah, I suck at
perceived
times.
failures.
I
And
have to admit that.
but we can tell you're just the guy that's like, well, that sucks. On to the next one, and you keep on trucking, and that's what it takes.
Pretty much. And if I had given up on my stories, like after I went broke at the third issue of Guardians, I wouldn't be here. Like, okay, I tried this, whatever. No, my biggest thing that I always tell people is you got to believe in your comics or your stories, because that's your motivation. Like right now, I told you I'm struggling with something with one of my current series, but I want to keep pushing forward because I love the story that we're making, and I want to give like all the chances to try and make it happen, because I really feel that it could be something special. And the same way with Tokyo, like it took me months to find Lam, but once I found him and we got the art going, I'm like, this is going to be something special. And sure enough, it has been for me and for many others like you two. I'm only here because you guys are at Tokyo. let's just be honest there.
Yep.
So, and I have to keep pushing
It's true.
forward, because you never know when that next big opportunity or big break or whatever. And I've been blessed to have worked with people that eventually got me into a publisher in SourcePoint Press, and I'm hoping to work with other publishers in the future. My dream is to work with DC or Marvel, but until that happens, I'm going to keep grinding, because I've got stories to tell, and if I don't tell them, no one else is probably going to.
Absolutely. I mean, what you're discussing is reminding me of my favorite show. It's these two artists who
Here we go.
eventually got Nickelodeon, of all things, to pick up Avatar. Right? Avatar is not a Nickelodeon style show.
Oh, Last Airbender.
Avatar: The Last Airbender. The Last Airbender. Yeah. Like, it's not something Nickelodeon would typically put out, right?
No.
But took a chance. One of the most epic, beautiful pieces of storytelling in human history, in my opinion.
Yes.
And just, you remind me of that. And I think that's a very good thing.
Well,
if I could just compliment you on that.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because one part of my origin story I did not mention was what got me into long form writing. And it was The Legend of Korra. Because after the season 1 finale, which most people agree season 1's the best outside of season 3, no one talks about book 2. I had this idea for what would be the Avatar after Korra, and so I going back to IGN, they had a blog thing, and I'm like, I wrote out one chapter of the story, and they go, hey, this is really good, you should write more. So I'm like, okay. So I started writing a fully fledged, fully dialogued everything fanfic called, my very first fanfic called Avatar Spirit of Earth. And I went so full tilt on it that I wrote out a 60 plus chapter story and had my comic buddy Alex Garcia make an Avatar style animation intro sequence, which you can find on YouTube today. And because of that confidence, I went to go and writing TV scripts, because I want to make a Shazam TV series and redeem the character from the movies. And because of those, I eventually had the confidence to say, you know what, I probably could go write comics. So, as I like to say, I owe my career to Avatar Korra. And I actually a friend of mine got to meet Korra, and we made this art piece of my avatar meeting Korra, and I made sure that he told her that I was only in comics because of her, and she was really moved and she loved the art piece. So yeah, Korra knew my fanfic existed. Thanks, Janet.
What's her name? It's
Janet Varney.
Janet Varney. That's right.
Yeah.
I listened to their podcast, and she's
Yeah.
awesome.
I almost got to meet Dante Bosco at C2E2 last year. I was at his Q&A with the Avatar crew, and I was literally the next person in line, but then they had to stop the Q&A, and I'm like, no! But yeah, he's amazing.
What were you gonna ask? What were you gonna ask Dante Bosco?
I was going to do a joke there, but I won't. He voiced Zuko in an episode of the internet show Death Battle, and I wanted to ask about that. Like, how did that happen? Because that was just so cool. Like, oh, they're doing a Zuko in episode. Oh, wait, that actually sounds like Zuko. And then I'm like, no, it actually is Zuko. Holy crap! So, because that's very rare that Death Battle gets to do that because of contracts and all that. But Dante is incredible, and they had the voice of Aang and the voice of Sokka, Jack Senna, and like they were just great. The crowd, fully packed room. I was in the back in standing room area, but it was just like I was worth it. I would do that because I wanted to see the Avatar crew. But that show has been an inspiration for me for a long time, and I don't know how well the whole Avatar Studios thing will work out with the timing and all that, but I will give them the faith because they have earned our trust. So
Well, I'm hoping that they're gonna set like a new standard because you have like all the writer stuff in Hollywood and all that, but we're seeing a movement towards more independent media stuff, and you're seeing these like independent creators like make little teams and then start doing their own production. So I'm hoping the same way they kind of revolutionized to some degree how storytelling was done with like Western cartoons, the Avatar Studios might be like a breakthrough in like how you can build your own world building thing without needing some big backer anymore. You know, you get your big break with the backing, but then go off on your own and have that creative control to keep the integrity.
yeah,
Nickelodeon even kind of screwed them at the end.
they did. They
So, I
totally
mean,
screwed over Korra,
yeah,
but that's
yeah.
uh gonna consider a joke here, but I won't. So, but like I'm actually trying to do something similar to what you were pitching with. Right now I'm actually trying to get an animation team together so that I can make an anime style intro for Tokyo Blade Detectives. We actually referenced it on the Kickstarter with that storyboard. We're really close to actually getting that started, and if that works, then maybe I will get a chance to make a full-on anime of Tokyo, and that would be really cool. But the biggest thing will be you got to keep the integrity because it's really easy for anime to go off the rails in ways that I don't appreciate. So, yeah. Let me put it this way: I've never watched Black Clover, but I've seen some clips on YouTube, and I'm literally watching this, going, "What the heck am I watching?" Like the dialogue is so over the top, and like I'm no, I don't want that for Tokyo. So, yeah.
That's true. So we have Avatar.
Okay.
Awesome. What other animated series? So it doesn't have to be anime in particular.
Okay.
Although I am curious about anime in particular. What would you list as your like inspirations that you're putting into this kind of?
Excellent question. Um, the biggest one is one I honestly wasn't expecting, and that was Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I didn't get to watch that until that was on Netflix, and a friend recommended it to me, and she's like, "You want to watch Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood?" I'm like, and I knew of it. I had heard of Full Metal Alchemist, but I never seen it. And then once we got like past like the first episode or two, I really dug it. And what I appreciated about it, which really influenced Tokyo, was every character, every story, every arc intertwined in a way that influenced the end. There were characters you would meet in the final episodes that were like in the first two. Everything was relevant. There was no, oh, random villain of the week. There wasn't that. Everything was connected, and it helped build the sins and father and everything. And I loved that, and it was so self-contained and beautiful that by the time you got to the end, it was a satisfying ending, which is yeah, it was. And even though for some reason Roy Mustang had the Hitler mustache, but I digress. You got with Hawkeye, so that's what really matters. That's what really matters there. But that one was a huge influence because I'm like, okay, I was because originally I was just like, okay, I was just make it like an anime series, have various arcs, but I'm like, no, let's have everything be interconnected. So now I'm thinking about not just what this arc is, it's what builds to the next arc. So like arc 1 built to arc 2, arc 2 will go to 3, 3 to go 4, and so on and so forth. And that's how I would have the anime interpret it, and that was very very beautiful to me. Let's see what other anime, like even though it's not technically anime, Avatar definitely. Ruby, from a Rooster Teeth. You know that there's a
Okay.
lot of fun in there. Like the weapons combat definitely had an influence on me with how I handle Tokyo, and you know the different weapons we're going to see there. Like how we have Wolf. Oh, I want to talk about that. When I made Wolf for issue number 7, who we actually referenced in issue number 2, um, I was like, okay, he's going to have a giant broadsword. Just make it look cool. And Lam goes, they didn't really use broadswords in Japan. Why don't we give him a, naginata? And I'm like, holy crap, that's a great idea. so like I said, the artist taking initiative, because I'm like, yeah, just have him with like giant broadsword. It looks so cool. Like, no, it's doing naginata. That looks even better. So,
Slaps you. This is not Final Fantasy.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is hilarious because I'm playing Final Fantasy Remake right now. I just got to the cloud cross-dressing scene, and my God, did they hand that up? But
Of course.
no, but it's just like I'm watching the scene where he gets put into the chair and dressed up as a girl, and my first thought is, how did they get his clothes off? Because they make it clear that his clothes did come off, because Aerith hands him the bag with his clothes later on, and like they somehow got his clothes off and put on the dress with no one screaming about a naked cloud or whatever. I'm like, I don't need to know the answers, but these are the questions that writers ask, because I'm like, what am I really seeing here? Anyway,
Never mind a sword that's heavier than like 3 people combined.
well, I mean,
But
it worked for Guts, so
true.
yeah, I mean,
True.
if Guts could do it, and they make it clear that soldiers have like superhuman strength because of Mako, which is why they're poisoned. But let's see, what other ones? Um,
Well, did Berserker
I
have a
actually
play
never
in
got
this?
into Berserk. I only knew about it
Okay.
ironically because of Death Battle, and once I heard the backstory of Guts, I'm like, I don't need to read this because that's dark anime or manga in this case, and no one likes to talk about the 2016 series for various reasons. But
Eh.
yeah, um, oh, I don't want to tell the story, but I gotta tell it anyway. So Death Battle is bringing back Guts for a second episode, and I decided to like actually dive into the backstory this time. And there's apparently a scene where a woman is confronted by, and I quote, a lustful horse, and I'm like, dear God, I don't need that image in my head, but like that's what Berserk is.
Yeah.
That's what happens. So
Berserk, yeah, it goes to some weird
yeah,
places for sure.
I mean, just
Yeah.
just a transformation scene with Griffith is like everything that you could possibly go dark with. Like, how far can you take it and then take it farther? But
Yeah.
going with her Berserk, bad Guts. Dragon Slayer is awesome though, but Pokemon to a lesser extent, because they're like Pokemon sometimes doesn't get the appreciation it gets for the deep storytelling and characters that they have. There have been multiple episodes where I've literally been moved by Pokemon, which is really weird because it's like, oh, it's about monsters fighting. So there's a little more going on there.
Did you ever see him let Butterfree go? God dang.
First movie I ever cried at was the Pokemon movie.
Right.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bawled my eyes
Yeah.
out.
Yep.
Ash is stone. Don't ask how he got turned to stone, because that definitely is not how Pokemon moves work. There is no Pokemon move about petrifying people. I just want to make that clear. For me, the one that got me to cry was I know this is well later on, but Pokemon XY, Serena's first contest where it ends in absolute failure, and she goes to a dock alongside her Pokemon, cries her eyes out, then she cuts her hair and completely redoes her wardrobe and pushes forward like you said, you fail, okay, I failed, moving on. That seriously inspired me. I'm 20 something years old at C2E2 watching this episode in my hotel room. I'm like, if Serena could get back from that, I can keep doing my thing. I'm going to the con right now. And I went to the con like 2 hours early. I met some really cool people. It was all because of Pokemon and Serena. So God bless. Also, Ash and Serena
That's
forever.
awesome.
Yeah. But yeah. Oh, Ash and Misty. No, Ash and Serena. Period. End of story. Don't talk about anything else. Okay. Here's one I'm sure will probably throw you a little bit. DuckTales reboot.
Okay. Explain yourself.
That is to me peak animation in terms of character development, storylines, arcs, having fun, being serious, and just taking the original concept of DuckTales, which was honestly all over the place if you really look back at it, and taking it in hilarious directions. In the original series, Huey, Dewey, and Louie had the same voice. They were basically interchangeable, and they didn't really have like a story arc. Whereas in the reboot, every character had an arc, from um, Scrooge, the triplets. Crap, I just forgot her name. Mrs. Pleakley. Who's the daughter? Crap, I lost the name.
Well, I don't remember the DuckTales
Ah,
characters, but
screw it, looking
that's
up.
okay.
But
Yeah.
like that was peak. And I was just talking about this with a friend, and I was like, it's a crime that we got Webby. It was a crime that we only got 75 episodes with that because it was like the best. It was so good. I loved watching those episodes, and like that's the kind of story that I want to make, where it's you're looking forward to every episode because you never know what's going to happen. It's a beautiful thing, and that's the thing about a writer, in my opinion, or even an artist, is that your inspirations come from everywhere. I didn't expect to like the DuckTales reboot, but I did. I didn't. I didn't expect to be as much into certain anime as I was, like with Full Metal Alchemist or Yu Yu Hakusho. I'm like, oh, everyone's talking about Spy X Family. My gosh, that show is so crazy, and yet you can't help but love it at times, even though it makes no gosh dang sense. All right, how does Lloyd? How does Lloyd not know something's wrong with York? It's so obvious, and he's like, "Well, that's weird. You're a spy. Gosh dang you!" Um, he could dissect the inner workings of an entire kingdom. He can't tell that there's something wrong with his life or his daughter, for that matter. Um, anyway, see, this is the kind of stuff that gets me going. Like, I could talk about this for hours. So, but sometimes you just have to try these new things and be inspired by that. And the new story I'm doing right now, Crusader Mysteries, that was, I like to call it my crossover between Scooby Doo, which I also love, and Only Murders in the Building. Two things you really wouldn't think would go together, but I wrote a story like that, and I think it's one of my best stories, and I can't wait to see it fully done. So the inspirations just come from anywhere and everywhere, and it's a blast to think, oh, what am I going to come up with next? So
And you mentioned with a couple of the inspirations, so this seems to be like a core thing that you appreciate and you move into your stories is the every character having like an arc, like there's the dynamicness to even smaller
yeah,
characters. And Tokyo Blade that definitely comes across because you see everyone has kind of like these two things, and everyone's like what they're doing now versus like their development is different, and each of the characters it's kind of at first it takes, at least for me, it like felt like it took a while, but then as I got like the rhythm of like, oh, how because I guess the experience is like you're seeing like the past arcs moving while the current arc is moving, so it eventually gets into this like really fun flow, which is very anime esque. It's like, okay, I know that I'm going to see the rest of the story, but I'm also going to get uncovered like past arcs. So it definitely shows that, like you mentioned it a couple times, it definitely shows in Tokyo Blade that kind of like rounding out characters to each have their own arcs moving that intertwine with like the main story.
yeah, I'm a big story guy, and it would be easy just for me to write, especially with Tokyo, just a full on action sequence and just have like the lightest of stories. But I don't want that. I like to know that I'm investing in these characters, and that readers will be like, "Oh, this arc is more about Miko. This one's about Michio, and or all of my others characters." And I want that because I want them to get invested in more than just, oh, hey, this is really cool looking art, or hey, I know Todd's a good writer, I should support his stuff. I want to like, oh, I want to see where this all goes. And when issue 8 is done, which I think you guys will really like, we set up an arc that completely goes 180 from where we've been before, and it'll set up some really interesting things. And so it's like, now how do I balance that with these new characters, the old characters, setting up what's coming, and so on and so forth. And then when I look at movies and TV shows, both good and bad, I look at what am I feeling as I'm connecting with these characters? Am I even connecting with these characters? For example, Secret Invasion did not. So bad. I just it's so bad. And I'm sorry if you two actually like Secret Invasion. That just means very bad things for you. But no, I want to connect with characters, and when I'm watching movies or TV shows, if I'm not connecting with them, I go to myself, okay, how would I have made that better? How would I have done that differently to probably try and connect people with it more? Because that's just how my mind goes. If I can't, and that's another inspiration sometimes I have is like, okay, that's a great story. But what if they had done this instead and then done this with this or put this character here? And that's been the focal point of some of my stories in the past. So it just I love stories that are meaningful, are fun, have good characters that you like. I've had people literally come to me and say, like, you're I love this story because I can totally relate to this character and what they went through. And I'm like, that's great. That means I've succeeded. That you were so connected and felt as they were so relatable in a certain way that you loved learning what happened to them. So
Mhm.
whether it's big characters,
Excellent.
little characters, it matters to me.
Do you digest many literary works that aren't, graphic or because like what you just described, like I feel like you'd be a Brandon Sanderson fan
I've heard
in the
wonderful
fantasy
things about
genre.
his books. I used to be a big literary
Okay.
guy. I read Lord of the Rings. I read Harry Potter like 1,000 times. Aragon. Now, there was a bad ending. See,
It was, yeah.
see,
That one got me into the fantasy genre, but yeah,
see.
yeah.
I'm sorry. When you set up 4 books deep, which it was only supposed to be 3 if you recall, and you're literally have your bad guy kill himself by saying "be not," no, just no. I felt that was I really feel that was my first like bad experience with an ending. This is like I've been invested in this for years, and this is what I get. Anyway, but ironically, as I've grown older, and I am so old. Oh, I'm so old. I I kind of just fell out of just pure literary works. I still read the printed word occasionally, like website articles and various other things, or fanfic to a lesser extent, because I write it myself. But I've never gotten to Brandon Sanderson, even though I heard he's incredible. And it's just my parents and my sister were the ones that say, "Hey Todd, you should try this out," or "Todd, you should try this out." And they were the ones who said like, "Hey, you should read Harry Potter." "Hey, oh, Dad's reading Lord of the Rings and he has the book. Let's just go and read that." Accelerated reader, if you remember that from school days.
I do remember that. Yep,
Yeah, that was a big thing. Like, hey, how many points can I get for this book? Yeah, sure. I guess I'll read it now. Um, but as I've grown older, I want to read stuff that I feel that I know I will like with comics, and I have a big stack behind that EV over there of
hmm
just
yep.
the weekly stuff I get between DC, Marvel, and Boom. So it's
On the on the flip side, you mentioned writing, bigger like fanfic pieces like the Avatar one. Have you considered like doing one of those and putting on Kickstarter to just get like a series published that's just like a novel?
I'm not sure I could do that honestly, because of rights issues. Because
But
Yeah.
I mean, you
You
got
talk
plenty.
about an original story.
Yeah, you got. If I've learned anything about you from the start of our interactions to now, it's the amount of different things you want to play with story wise. So I feel like somewhere in you, you got like a book you could write with like just pulling the inspirations, but an original.
Oh, yeah, I've been toying with some original novels. There was one I was writing during college, and I stopped right as I graduated, and I just never picked it up again. And I felt bad because it's like it's a really good story. Then like years later, I went back to it, and I got a little farther, and then I stopped again. And then last year, I was actually inspired by a video game where I did another. Oh, that's a great story. What if we did this, this, and this? And I wrote a new story called The Choice of Thorns, and inspired by various things like Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, and all that. Game of Thrones I never read, and so my own connection there was a series, which is why it hurts so bad when the ending sucked. It's like just the endings with Todd Black. But I want to finish that one, and I feel that I might soon enough because it is original, and if it does, I might go to Kickstarter to get that out there. I guess I can't get a publisher, but I love literary stories. Sherlock Holmes was the biggest one. I've written 6 novels of that, as you guys probably know from the ones I sent you for the Kickstarter. Uh, should have gotten it, I think. But
Yep,
yeah,
that's my next read in the
there you
series because I'm a big sucker for Sherlock
there you go.
stories
Yeah,
in every
yeah.
form.
I've written 6 of those so far, and those are fun just because I get to use a well known character, but tell my twist on the stories. And I really loved some of the ones I've come up. I loved all of them, but like some more than others, obviously. And the last one took like well over a year to write because I did another thing where I wrote up like a whole bunch of pages. I stopped and I waited a long period. I'm like, oh, I probably should get back to that book, and then realized it's been a year since I got it done. I'm like, well done, Todd. Wait. So, but yeah, you're not wrong about me. I write all sorts of things. I write pure literary. I do comics, graphic novels. I do fanfic. Oh, that's one thing I want to mention. There was a writer, I won't say who, but let's say he was a big wig at Marvel, and he said online one day that fan fiction is not real writing. That's a lie. especially when you do it how I do it, and you put like everything you have into these stories and characters. Like right now I have technically 3 fanfics: the Avatar one, which sadly has been erased from the internet, thanks IGN. I still have some of it, but I'm never going to refinish it. I have a Ruby one, and I have My Hero Academia. And My Hero Academia one just passed, what was it? I think 25,000 reads on fanfiction.net. I get, yeah,
Dang.
A
like,
good story is a good story.
yeah, and I'm on season 3 right now, and I just put it out there, wanted to get the idea out of my head, and I just wrote chapter by chapter, and I built up that fan base, and I get like couple like 500 plus reads with every chapter I post, and like every time I post, I somehow get like a new follower, a new reader, and that's writing. Period. All right. I mean, I
Mhm.
don't know why he said that. He might have just had a bug up his butt for something or whatever. But
Yeah, I think he forgot that most mythology stories are fan fiction.
yeah,
And I mean, and aren't if you're not the original creator of the comic character, aren't you kind of doing just a professional fan fiction thing?
that is it.
Yeah, just like I always say, like I'm an orchestra musician, right? And symphony orchestras are they're just cover bands. They're huge cover bands.
Yeah.
Like there's no original. We're still playing Beethoven. It's fucking 300 years old,
Yeah.
right? Like
Exactly. And that's why I was really hurt by that, because as I noted, I got into comic writing because of an Avatar fanfic. I wrote
Mhm.
I used to write long form stories, to develop characters, to think of arcs, to think about how the characters interact in certain situations, and I got really good at it because I had the practice through fanfic. Now, yes, there is that kind of fanfic where it's absolutely not about the story and about certain interactions, if you get my drift. And that one has the black eye, but there are plenty of fanfic writers who just go, "Hey, I want to take this story in this direction," and they run with it.
Okay, actually, hold on. All of the
Oh
like
boy.
greater canon of Star Wars is fan fiction
Yeah,
because
it
Star
is.
Wars never bothered to make its own canon, so fans did, and then eventually they were like, we could use this, and slowly started seeping it into the Clone Wars series. So we wouldn't even have a full Star Wars canon if it wasn't for the
Yeah.
fanfics.
I mean, you guys honestly make a great point in that, to a certain extent, there's a lot of things that are fanfic. If going back to Star Wars, anything that George Lucas touched, let's just say like the first 6 movies, let's just be generous, that's the canon, and everything that everyone else made is the fanfic. Clone Wars
Yep.
cartoons,
Yep.
both versions, fanfic. Mandalorian, fanfic. Sequel, no one talks about the sequels. Had to get that dig right there. The Ewoks cartoon, yes, there was an Ewoks cartoon, fanfic. It's all about your
Oh,
interpretation.
there's a Star Wars Christmas
There's a
special.
Star
All
Wars
right.
Christmas
Like,
special. Happy Life Day, everybody.
right.
But yeah, like that's its own version of fanfic. Yes, it's in canon because the owner says it was. And who's the owner? Disney. And Disney will say anything is canon if they can make money off of it. So,
Yeah.
especially for Bob Iger, the dick. Yeah, he's a dick. You support your local writers and actors, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, everything is there's so many things that are fanfic, and comics is exactly the same way. Where not Bob Iger, Bob Kane, Stan Lee, all the guys who made these legendary characters, they're gone now. Rest in peace. You're continuing their stories. It's all fanfic because you're a fan of the
Yeah.
character and you're asked to make a new story with them. So
Yeah, there wouldn't be like different. The first thing that came to mind with that is like the Joker, where it's like, what's his origin story? Where it's like, well, he couldn't have different ones if people weren't changing who he was. They're taking a character and they're writing their version.
yeah,
That's like,
Yeah. I mean, Stanley did. I think it was Stanley. But fucking Thor. You know.
it just took
yeah,
took
Thor.
a
Thor.
Like, right.
Thor in the comics is completely different from the Norse mythology, and not just in his looks. And he even said he didn't want a redhead; he wanted a blonde. So like that
Right.
immediately makes it a fanfic Thor. So
Yep.
Mm.
it's all fanfic. So if you're writing whatever you write, whether it's poems, short story, long story, fanfic, comics, novels, whatever, it's writing. As long as you write it, and it helps you get the confidence to make other stories. So
Mhm.
that's, again,
Yeah.
believe in your
And it
stories
helps
wherever
you
they are.
absolutely, and it helps you cut your chops. I
Yeah,
mean, if you can play in someone else's sandbox for a while, you get used to the idea, and you go, well, what if I did my thing?
exactly.
And you play with that.
When I
Absolutely,
wrote
yeah.
when I
It's
wrote
a
my avatar
organic
when I
process.
wrote my avatar story, I didn't change the world in various ways. And just a reminder, this was written after season 1 of Korra, and there was 454 days until season 2, so I had plenty of time to write, and I did certain things better than the rest of Korra. And I'm just saying.
How many kaiju battles did you put in?
Actually, I did have, and I had a first Avatar origin story. I would say that mine's on par, or if not better than one's, but that's another debate for another time. But I had the spirits. I had a massive dragon battle. It was great. But I took the world that they gave me between Last Airbender and the first season of Korra, and just like, okay, just dial it up a little bit. Like, let's do this kind of bending, because this was before like lava bending and lightning bending, or no, we had lightning bending, but some of the other bendings. And I was like, okay, let's just dial this up, and made it just feel accurate, but having my own flair onto it. And that's all it is. And again, through that, I learned about, you know, talking in character voices, like how would this character react to this situation happening, and what's the end game? Where do they need to go, and how do I fill it in? It all happened because I just took the time to write the fanfic. And so if you want to write a fanfic to get your chops, do it. Have fun. Go nuts. Keep it clean.
Absolutely. Or make some money if you don't want to keep it clean.
Yeah, let's be honest.
Commission's open.
Yeah.
Commission's open.
Let's be honest here. Just ties back to Kickstarter too. There are plenty of people who love the not safe for work stuff, and they'll pay more for that than they will for the clean stuff. Let's just be honest.
We at one time saw the number for how much, as an industry, the furry not safe for work stuff brings in.
Oh, it's a lot.
It's
a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
But I mean, yeah, sex sells.
I know.
It's
Humans
are humans.
I won't go into this rant because it's another topic entirely. I will never be that person, because it just, I gotta say this carefully because I don't want to insult people. It's just not for me. I don't.
Well, it becomes all you do, right?
Yeah. And
I know artists who have they like dipped into it to be like, well, people want to pay for it, and then it's like, well, they remind people like, hey, I make clean art, and nobody fucking cares after that, and it's
Well, and if you lean it too much into any trope, especially that kind of thing with like an anime, you start losing some of the character like roundedness.
Right.
Although I haven't watched all of Naruto, but you have. They introduced that kind of trope, but that doesn't. It's a funny bit, but it doesn't seem to stick.
What are you talking about in
his transformation, like right away?
the sexy jutsu.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole thing.
Or you can even talk about Tsunade and how she is. But she's, even though they made it clear that she's really tough character, but what do people really remember about Tsunade? So it's a tricky thing, and that's actually one thing I explicitly made sure to not do in Tokyo, was have the let's call it curvy girls. I have one, and that's the Empress, and that was actually Lom's doing. Her concept art had her much more tame, and then he has her with like a rather enlarged chest, and I'm like, well, I guess I gotta have one. I gotta have one.
Yeah.
She's an adult. She's a full-blown adult, so you never know. But I will not.
Well, she's not 1,000 years old, but
Yeah, but none of my characters, especially my female characters, will ever be presented in a way that exploits their bodies, just because that just doesn't appeal to me. I want them to be remembered for their characters.
Okay, admittedly, there is no distinction between the male and female characters as far as like how the characters are developed in the Tokyo Blade Detectives. And reading number 7, that became really obvious to me. I was like, oh right, like for some reason, like it dawned on me that I hadn't noticed that. Like in the beginning, you like think about it, and then the story moves along, and everyone's just a character, right? Like so you don't get that obvious split dynamic you do in something where there is tropes about like sexuality or anything like that. It is very much just everyone is an individual person, and that's the first thing you think about when you see the character, and that's with all of them. So
that's just how I am very naive in that way, but that's how I like to look at people. Like it doesn't matter if you're a man. One of the greatest people I know is a woman, and I talked to her earlier today. She's smarter than me. She's stronger than me. She's better than me in every way, and I don't see her as just a woman. I see her as like one of these amazing people that I know. She's actually one of my comics, and I'm like, that's why I want her in the comic, because she's that epic. And it boggles my mind when I look at, let's go back to Black Clover. there's that, I don't remember the character's name, Vanessa, I think it was, where she, like, her attire is basically underwear. Like, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, her. He knows what I'm talking about. And I'm like, that's her thing. And yes, there's technically more there, but she's drunk all the time, and that's all she wears is like is underwear. I'm like, that's a choice. It's a choice. Or My Hero
Well,
Academia. One of the I hated this so much. There's an episode in season 3, and we meet it's Mei with the gearhead with the goggles, and she's working in the lab.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's working in the lab, and Midoriya and Uraraka and someone else is with them. The door explodes to the lab, and Mai comes flying out and lands on top of Midoriya. Okay, classic comedy trope. Oh, except when Midoriya lifts his head, he has a front eye view to her chest, which is, slightly revealed. Mai is 15. I don't need to think about this or see this. And of course, Midoriya
Right.
goes red faced, and Uraraka loses it because like she crushes on Midoriya hard. And I'm just like, they made that choice to do that joke, and I don't like that because again, Mai is 15. So
but my brother's a bigger anime guy than I am. And I talked to him about that once, and he didn't give me much of an explanation because we didn't have a lot of time.
fair enough.
But he made the point. He's like, look, it is a cultural thing.
It is. It
Like,
absolutely is.
we see that a lot of trouble with how Westerners interpret what we consider sexual tropes in anime, but there's different distinctions between when it's sexual and when it's like, I guess, more like comedic or like sensual type of thing.
No, it's absolutely a culture thing, and like that's why I have no doubt that if you show Tokyo Blade Detectives to someone from Japan, they're gonna be like, "Oh, a Westerner wrote this, didn't they?" because of how I interpret and perceive their culture in terms of like the Ronin, the ninja, and my main characters and whatever. And it was who was it? It was Hideki Kamiya from Platinum Games, who made Bayonetta and all these other great games. And he was asked about the perception of RPGs versus JRPGs. And some people don't like it. There were some Square Enix people who didn't like it. And he goes, look, I like it for this very simple reason. It's about how we interpret our culture. We have a certain way of looking at things. And if you look at the West, they have a certain way of looking at things. And he gave the example of Platinum Games originally wanted to make a game character like Kratos. Your big, muscly, super dude.
Mm-hmm.
And they just couldn't wrap their heads around it. So instead, they made Bayonetta. something they could absolutely wrap their heads around. And there's the difference. We Americans, or even just people in the West, think strong character. You think, super muscular demigod who wants to kill everything. Japan goes, what if we made a woman whose heels are also guns, has hair that is her clothes, and can summon demons? Okay.
Makes sense to me.
There's the difference. And that's their choice, and that is their right. I don't have to like this, they don't have to like our stuff. And that's okay. We are all allowed to like what we like and not like what we don't. So, and for those people out there who like the not safe for work comics, read them. Enjoy them.
We're blessed. We're blessed with variety. We forget about that.
That is
we're blessed with
an
variety.
excellent way of phrasing it. We are blessed with variety, no matter what your tastes are, and we all know there's a lot of different tastes out there, don't we?
Yeah, man.
So.
I feel like there's a rule for
several.
Oh, several.
There's a rule for each of them.
Right. But as a president once said, "To each their own," and that's the truth.
It's true.
So, yeah, different writing styles, different art styles, different genre styles. It's all out there if you want to look for it. So.
Absolutely. Now, do you feel so? With you have so many projects, and some have more longevity than others in your, do you ever feel like trapped in any of them, or if you just get bored, you put it away for a while? Like.
I feel. I think I've been blessed enough to know when to stop. Like example with Guardians, that was my only goal when I made the superhero series, because superheroes were my life up to that point, outside of certain anime, obviously. But I didn't have an anime idea at the time. I was all about superheroes. And I even had people telling me, you shouldn't do superheroes, Todd. It's not going to sell. I proved them wrong. But oh, you're never going to go up against DC and Marvel and Image and Dark Horse and all of them, and they were right to an extent. But Guardians is still one of my best sellers, and I have 5 volumes. So, and people are asking me, hey, when are you going to make volume number 6? Well, I've got all these other things to do first. But with Home, 2,000 Miles, Five Bullets, Six Men, and certain other ones, there was always an end to them. And so I always knew, like, okay, once this is done, I can move on to the next project. With Tokyo, I do a thing where I make the volume, then I take a year off to go and do other things and save up for the next volume, and then I'll pick up and do it again. So after I'm done with 8, by the end of the year, I will take a year break, and then I'll jump in to do number 3. And by that time, I'll have other projects done. It can get easy to get trapped if you're like so invested, but I think it's just because of how my mind works, I always know, like, I want to go and do this next, or I want to do this, or I want to get this out of my head. So I think I've been blessed to not be trapped, but there are obviously people who have. I was like, I gotta. There's plenty of people in the comic industry, like who've done DC and Marvel, and they wanted out because it's like I don't want to keep doing superheroes. Jimmy Palmiotti was that way. He still will do it if asked, and he has in recent past. But he loves doing his hardcore, mature rated action and spy pieces because that's what makes him happy. And even though it won't be as probably name brand as DC or Marvel, those are his. Those are his projects, and he loves to do them, so he'll keep doing them.
Yeah. And I mean, indie folks keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because, DC and Marvel are huge, but, like, people are starting to get bored of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because they're more formulaic,
Oh, yeah.
Like, if they still want, like, I still want superheroes, but I can name the 4 main pillars that are going to happen in every single Marvel movie I see.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So it's like, so, like, you kind of want to see it just to see it, but at the same time, you probably want something a little more fresh, So the indie is where you turn.
Yeah, and that's exactly true. And with Tokyo, especially, it's very easy to look at and go, oh, it's just another anime story. I work hard to make it not just another anime story. I wanted to make it different from all the other ones I had seen, and even the ones are like, oh yeah, like Neo Japan or futuristic Japan. I try to make it stand out in its own ways. And then with the arcs, I again try to make them intertwined so that each one is relevant. So it's not just filler, which is something I took from Dragon Ball. Don't do filler. Curse you, filler arcs. Well, there will never be a filler arc in Tokyo because that's an insult to the fans, to me, to my artist. I want every arc to be meaningful, every issue to be as meaningful as possible. So and then with my next idea, it's a 4-part mini series. I'm just changing some certain things to make it stand out from other mystery books you've read. And that's the goal of all writers is for these kinds of projects is to make it stand out from the crowd while having your own flair and having a lot of fun making it.
Absolutely. Now, do you write, does the muse come to you and you just have to do it? Or do you have a few hours set aside, every day where the muse is on speed dial, whether she wants to or not?
This is another segment of failure talk with Todd Black. I would love to say that I just, I get everything done, and then I just go to my computer and I just start typing the words fly off the page. It doesn't always go that way. It really doesn't. There are times when I will say, okay, look, I got till midnight to get all my work done. I go to bed at like 1 a.m. And I got this amount of time to write. Let's see how much I can get done. I totally do that. And then other times it's like, I could probably crank out, a couple pages in this hour. Let's do that. The easiest for me is writing comic scripts for whatever reason. Because I will literally say, okay, Todd, you need to get the script done either today or tomorrow. See how much you can get done today. And I'll sit at my computer and I will get as much done in that day as possible. But then for like my novels, I'll like get on a flow and then I'll get to a certain point. I'm like, oh, I'm so happy I got here. Then it's like, oh, then I need to write the next part. It's not coming to me. So let's just back off for a while. So everyone has their own writing style. The 2 styles I always hear about is the meticulous planner, which is every single point that is going to happen. You just got to fill in the words. And then there's the fly by the seat of your pants, which is the George R.R. Martin approach, which is why we haven't gotten the rest of the Game of Thrones books. And
he's got a lot of threads out that
exactly
need to come together, and
exactly.
We'll see how it goes.
And for me, I am the fly by the seat of your pants writer. There are with my comic arcs, I know generally, okay, like here's where we start, here's where we end. This is what I know is going to happen in issue 25, which yes, I do know what will happen in Tokyo number 25. And it's going to be big. Spoilers. But with when I'm writing like the pages, I'm like, okay, let's just feel what comes naturally. And I'll just start writing, and I'm sometimes amazed at the clever things that I come up with. With number 7, I didn't intend to do the Akira bike slide, but I did it because I'm like, okay, we have a motorcycle chase. Wait a minute, I have a motorcycle chase. I can do the Akira slide. Yes.
It's not an anime unless you reference Akira.
Exactly.
I don't make the rules.
It's if I didn't do it then, I do not know when I would have had another motorcycle a scene to do that in, and it came out very well. And thank you, Lon, for doing that. I literally showed him a YouTube video of like the Akira slide and every single reference to it in every show ever, and it's hilarious how many people love it.
There's a lot.
It's so many, including in shows that probably didn't need to do it, but they did it anyway. Bless your hearts. So, anime, everybody, it does influence a lot more than you think.
It's true. Oh, it's like the what's the scream? The Wilhelm scream is like in everything. Yeah. It's in everything.
Oh, here's a fun fact for you. Do you know the original use of the Wilhelm scream?
The dude, it was a cowboy, right? He got shot on his horse or something like that. Oh.
No. They found the original Wilhelm scream at like a storage facility for a college. It's a man getting eaten by an alligator.
That makes me even happier.
I know.
Oh my god!
They almost lost it, but they found it, and he actually did. That was not his first take of the scream. It was multiple takes of him like screaming as he's getting eaten by like an alligator or a croc, and it's like, ah! It's hilarious.
Oh,
the more you know.
Gold.
So
absolute gold.
It is. It is. So.
So now, Michael, when you have talked to me about writing, because Michael writes a bit as well, you like. It's as if you're watching a play and you write how the characters like.
Yeah, I see it very much movie-wise. I feel like I'm sitting in like a little bubble following them.
Right.
Because like, the dialogues usually just surprise me. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Wait, I'm writing.
Now, and Todd, are you the master controller of everything, or do you just kind of sit back and see how the characters react to the thing you do?
A little bit of both, I would say. It depends on the story. When I was writing the Spirit of Earth fanfic and even My Hero Academia, after a while, it was really easy to say like, oh yeah, this character would say that, and oh, this character would do that, and it would just totally be hilarious to watch her do it. I have in My Hero Academia fanfic, I have a character named Kuroda, and she's your typical big sister type, infinite confidence, but she's got a mean streak to her. And one of the characters I established is a military brat, basically, and she doesn't get along with my main character, Tonin. And to the extent that she actually leaves him to die because it's not her problem. Kuroda took that personally, in the words of Michael Jordan. And so they're doing this training exercise, and they have to climb up a cliff, and they cannot use their quirks unless they fall down. And so Kuroda and a bunch of the others are at the top. The military brat Chuya is right at the top, and Kuroda grabs her arms and goes, "Hey, Chuya, remember when I said I'd make you pay for leaving Tonin behind? Case in point." And she throws her off the cliff, and she yells, "Don't forget to use your quirk on the way down." Splat! She lived, obviously, but because of her quirk. But it was just like Kuroda is like the big sister, yet she threw that girl off the cliff, and it was totally in character because you don't screw with the big sister's family. So
I love that. It's giving me a lot of Lion King vibe. Long live the king.
Exactly. That's exactly how I pictured it. Like, hi, Kuroda. Like, uh-oh. And Tonin's like, what the heck was that? And she goes, oh, it's between me and her. We're all good now. We're all good. Chuya. And like, that's the thing is like, I didn't expect that moment. I knew the payback was coming. I just didn't get it. And then right when I got to that point, I'm like, oh, Kuroda would throw Chuya off the cliff. She wouldn't even hesitate. And that's just the beauty of it, is like sometimes these moments just happen. It's just like, oh, that's so good.
That's one of my favorites when you do something as a creative. I'll do this when I'm practicing music, and you just stop what you're doing for a second, like, damn, this is good. Yeah. Like when you just know. Yeah.
And to all you aspiring writers out there, make no mistake, I have plenty of crisis of confidence. All right, in every script I write, fanfic, novel, or comic, I literally start out dreading writing because I'm like, oh, is this going to be as good as the last one? You know, can I pull this off? Can I nail this ending, et cetera, et cetera? And like for number 8 is the interlude saga continuation where I do the epilogue, prologue, and continuation. And I go, okay, how am I going to make this work? And I'm like getting to the pages. I'm like, I got like 5 pages to go. Am I going to be able to fill out the story? And then I do this, this, and this. And I thought of a brand new scene that had never even crossed my mind before. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. How did I not think of that earlier? And I can't wait to see that play out. And that's why you just have to write, because sometimes you need that extra hand. Like when I wrote Tokyo #1, I gave it to my editor and I was like, okay, what do you think? And he goes, okay, this is good, but this page feels off. What if we did this instead? And he did this like foreshadowing of all the factions we were going to meet. And I'm like, I didn't even think of that. That's beautiful. That's why I'm grateful to my editors, because they have just as much vision as I do, and they go like, okay, this is good, but we can do this better. Hey, this doesn't make sense, Todd. Don't you think you need to correct that? And uh, sometimes you need that extra pair of eyes, or sometimes you just need to write it and let your mind like snap to something. There's no wrong way to write as long as you write.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's good.
It's true. And that goes back to the fanfic thing. I would not be where I am without fanfic. So fanfic is writing. All right.
Yeah.
As is short.
Writing is writing.
Writing is writing. Yeah. Math is math.
It's like, I don't know why you're changing things. Math is math. Great reference. Excellent.
Now, I think I know the answer to this, but I think it's important that people hear your answer to this.
Okay.
Have you ever gotten along, like you've gotten maybe 90% of something done, and you have a shower thought and you have to scrap the whole thing and just be like, I have to do this thing instead? Or are you pretty happy with the progress you make? Like, how many steps backwards do you have to take sometimes?
I have taken some major steps backwards. When I was doing Home, I think it was issue 2 or 3. Issue 1 was easy to write because it was a nice setup story. I knew how to handle it. The art was great. And then issue 2 or 3, it might have been 2. I was in this new world in the context of my story, and I'm like, how do I flesh this out? Because I knew it had to be a 5-part miniseries and all that. And I get done with the story, and I'm just like, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. So I went to my mentor, and I'm like, Brian, I need your help. I'm looking at this, and I can't think of how to make this better. And he goes, okay, I'll take a look. And he does, and he goes, okay, look, right now it's just too plotting. You need something to spice it up. Do something to liven it up. And I'm like, okay, so I scrapped like, I don't know, like 10, 15 pages probably. And I rewrote the whole thing. And then after I was done, I had that feeling. I'm like, this is what I needed. So I don't think I've ever fully scrapped the script. Well, actually,
Yeah.
okay, I keep mentioning this one series called Secrets of Science. That's one of the few series where I'm not directly making it myself. I'm working with associates or partners in this case, and they have as much say as I do on the script. So we were doing this issue, position number 5, and I write it. We do a bunch of changes, just fine, and then we get it approved. And then one of the ladies goes, actually, I have a better idea. We need to do this instead. And so we might have to completely scrap the whole thing because of her new desire. It's fine. That's part of our deal, is that I want her to be happy with it. But we had it approved, and I was like, okay, let's get this going. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, actually I wanted to change some things a lot. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do that. And we're still actually rating on that, but that's another story. So
Sure, yeah. Because I don't know. So Michael and I, we both have different like genres of how we go about the Metametheus project. Michael's the philosopher, and I'm not a psychologist, but I am a huge psychology nerd. So he comes from a philosophical lens, and I tend to come from a more psychological lens of creativity and just how we all operate in general.
Yeah.
And something called the sunk cost fallacy. Are you familiar with that?
The suck cost fallacy?
Sunk like a sinking ship.
Sunk. Okay, that sounds so much better.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So it's like, you put in so much time and effort and sometimes money into something, and then you realize later on down the line, it's like, this really isn't it. But I've already put so much into it. I gotta see it through. It's like that feeling of needing to see it through, even though it's maybe not the best action.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
And a lot of artists feel that. I was just kind of asking if you also get to that point sometimes.
I kid you not, I'm actually dealing with that right now. Not like right now, but like I have a project going on. I'm testing out this new artist, and everyone who looks at the art for this project is telling me like, "Oh, this looks really good, Todd." And then I look at it myself, I'm like, "Is it though?" So I have to ask myself, am I the problem? To quote Taylor Swift, "It's me. I'm the problem." Am I being too hard on the artist? Am I being too hard? Do I just have this unrealistic, perfect picture in my head that I'm not going to achieve? Do I just work with the artist to keep going, or do I eventually do this amount of pages and just like you say, like cut costs and I at least tried. Yeah, I would say I've gotten to there. Thankfully, it hasn't happened that often, but I know that there are definitely other people who have. And I think I saw on Twitter the other day that someone posted about a comic that they were going to do with IDW, and like they had picked it up, and then something happened. They just cut costs and stopped the whole project, even though they thought it was going to be like an award winner. So
Jeez.
yeah, I know.
Hmm.
I was like, well, that's definitely not a story I hear very often, but sometimes you do need to, cut costs, and other times you like what I'm probably going to do is just see it through, because if I don't, then I have to go back to try and find another artist, and it was a pain just to get this guy. So sometimes you just gotta say, okay, it may not be exactly what I wanted, but you're getting it out there, and if enough people like it, that's what matters. So
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a whole give and take. It's a
yeah,
process, not just here's my vision, let's make my vision. Usually that evolves
yeah.
in some way
Yeah, and I have
changes.
to remember that with Home, I had I've been blessed with most of my projects to have like one artist throughout the series. Home is one of the few examples of not being able to do that. And the first and second issue was done by a two-person team, and then the one guy had to bail. And so I asked my colorist at the time, Beth Varney, I'm like, "Hey, do you feel comfortable doing the rest of the issues?" And she goes, "Yeah, I can do that." And her style was both similar and entirely different, especially when I think of how the main character looked in issues 1 and 2 compared to 3 through 5. And I apparently didn't have a problem with that just because we were getting the story done. And so I need to kind of go back into that mindset of going like, hey, this is your perfect picture. That's a nice thing. You can push it away now. And it's like embrace what you have, make it work for you, and then get the story done. So
It's the Bugs Bunny meme, our picture. Yeah.
duck season, rabbit season, duck season.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
So on the note of getting stuff done, so you said October is going to be the next
Yes.
Kickstarter.
Yeah, we have 6 pages done of Tokyo Bay, Texas #8 right now. I want to get as many pages done before the Kickstarter. That way, once the Kickstarter is done, it's just like putting in the Kickstarter backers and just getting the printing done. So hopefully, everything will be mailed out, shipped out by the end of the year. So be like an early Christmas present for you guys. Congrats. So
Nice. So what other ones are going to be coming out like soon? Is there
soon. Uh,
or like in order, right? So
okay,
we got
so
that coming out in
like
October.
we are working on another issue of Secrets of Science, my science education comic, which I'm very, very proud of. We're working on issue #5 right now. That'll be out maybe in a month or so. My main guy Alex is on that. Very proud of him. uh, Tokyo will be out in a few months. Crusader Mysteries just got started, so that's probably not going to be till next year. And then we'll just see where things go from there, I guess. I don't. Another important thing is don't overload. Okay,
Yeah.
I have 3 projects going right now, but that's because one of them is not funded by me. I am the writer solely on that one. Another one is partially backed by Kickstarter stuff, so I feel comfortable, putting the money in because I know I'll get it back out in the end. And the third one is, I'm putting up the money, but I'm confident I can get a Kickstarter for that one too. So, but if I was trying to do all my ideas at once, I'd be a lot broker and a lot more stressed. I don't need that in my
Yeah.
life right now. So
Yeah. And the ideas themselves, the art would suffer for it. And
exactly.
that's not okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta just believe in your stories, but you gotta love what you're making. And even with what I'm dealing with my current artist for the Crusaders, um, I do like the art. It's just that because of how I've now trained my mind, I go, well, that doesn't look right. That doesn't look right. Does that look weird to anybody else? Anybody? Can anybody see that? And then I show it to my buddy, and he goes, "No, that looks great, Todd. Looks like a very modern comic." And I'm like, well, "What does that mean? Do I want to be just another modern comic?" it's the dilemma because you want to see the best work put out, but sometimes you have to realize that your perfect picture is not what it's going to be. So, and I've had that happen with Guardians. Like I look back at Guardians and I'm like, wow, I really approved that, didn't I? Because they're like, you go issue by issue and you can see the progress that the artist made, and like, getting the confidence and saying like, okay, this looks good, this looks better. Why did we do that? There's like a one issue where you have like such heavy shading on the characters, even though it's a very bright comic. I'm like, did I really like that? I mean, it's like, was that really so? And they keep buying it. They keep buying it. So clearly they like it. So
Yep, that's the thing, and it's usually the stuff we don't always expect is going to go well that people will like.
Yeah.
You know, it's the things we like. I remember I'm a trombone player, so I play a lot of jazz, things like that, and I played in a jazz club it was like an open mic type thing, and I just shredded on this tune that I knew really well, and I felt really good about it, and people enjoyed it. And then I played. It was like a freestyle thing with a beat poet, and she was saying stuff and the musicians were kind of playing around that, and I did one thing, like one like growl kind of lick thing to a response of what she said, and after that, that's what people, I did one thing and that's what people was like, that was like, yeah, that was so perfect. I'm like, I was just backing up a beat poet. Did you see what I did on Sarah Lee?
I've had
Yeah.
I've had that happen too. Trust me. It's like, oh Todd, this was so great. I'm like, that's awesome. Do you want to try out this? No, that's fine. I like what you did there, but that's it's the struggle. It's the eternal struggle. You want everyone to like everything. Like my dream is for people to buy every one of my books, but they won't because some only like this genre or that genre or that genre. But that's fine. That's why I have all these genres so that I can appeal to so many people.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm going to shift gears just a little bit because you mentioned him once, and I think it's important for artists to talk about these types of people. You have a mentor.
Yes.
Tell me about. You don't have to like give me his biography or anything, but what's that relationship like? How'd you guys come about as a mentor-mentee relationship?
We met at C2E2. A lot of my things happen at C2E2. That's why I go to it every year. It was my first year in Artist Alley, and I had exactly 6 issues of my Guardian series, which is not a lot. I don't even know why they let me in, to be completely honest with you. They did though, and so there it was, my 6 issues of Guardians, and then right next to me was a 3 or 4 man team. And by the way, that's actually not legal at that con, but didn't care. And one of them was this fez wearing, bow tie adorned dude named Brian Morris, and we just got talking, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm from Indiana." I'm like, "Oh, I'm from Illinois," and I was still trying to figure out my way in the con circuit and everything, and he gave me advice on what to do, where to go. Some of the cons that I love to do every year, I got to know about because of him, and he's very down to earth, very hilarious, and I could count on him for opinions, both good, bad, and indifferent. He's never afraid to tell me off or rib me one or offer me a donut at his table if he has them. And he's just a great guy. And I'm blessed to have met him and to have him in my life. And every time I see him at a con, when we do like a local one, I always praise him. He does a lot more novel stuff than I do, but he also does a lot more like pulp kind of stuff. He's very into that. But he also does comics, and it's great. So we just have this great rapport, and I'm if I need advice, I absolutely will go to him. So it's when you're really early in your career, and I'm not even talking about like the arrogance of the whole like, oh, I know everything. I learned very quickly I didn't know everything. I just took a Kickstarter, but you need that person's like who has done it. So like, yeah, this is good. Hey, do this, do this. I'm pretty sure he was one of the people who told me I could do a Sherlock novel. He's like, yeah, it's public domain. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, it was approved in Illinois even. I'm like, okay. So yeah, he's been great to have in my life.
That's perfect. Yeah, it's someone to give you feedback, someone knowledgeable who you can trust to give you honest feedback.
Yeah.
That is gold, absolute gold. You might not like what you. Let me ask you this: do you like what you hear from him every time?
No.
Like yeah, right. Like I know that was an obvious answer between the three of us, right? But I think people need to hear that,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
so a mentor is not someone who's there to kiss your ass.
No. No. Mentors are there to guide, and sometimes that guidance is not what you want it to be. When I mentioned, if you remember the home issue, he was the one I went to and said, "Hey, Brian, I need help here," and he gave me his honest opinion, and I needed that. I needed that honest opinion because I'm like, is this what I should be doing? And he goes, no, you probably should do this instead. And it completely worked out in my favor. And then other times I went to him for help and he goes, hey Todd, I'm sorry, I just don't have the time. And I go, that's totally cool. I'll ask someone else. And that happens. And I would say that I definitely haven't leaned on him as much more recently because I've gotten my own confidence and I have even more people I can talk to on a broader basis. But if I need a hand, I know I can count on him. So, and I think everyone should, whether you're an artist or a writer, should have that person that you can go to.
Mm-hmm. It's true, and it's funny because you can't force it to happen.
No,
you can't force someone to be your mentor.
Well, people that charge for being mentors would argue.
Well, that you're not forcing them, are you? You're purchasing their advice, which is okay. I do that. I teach private lessons, which is exactly what that is. Right? Mm-hmm. So people come to me, make me better at my instrument. Okay, that's $50 an hour. Like that is what it is. But if that's the transaction, if you want to call it that, you want quality. You want quality for what you're putting in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's absolutely it. No, I just thought it was important to mention that the mentor aspect because
I've had,
it is about
Brian.
the community.
Brian was the biggest one. I've obviously met more during my Comic-Con experiences and such, but he was the big one that I count on the most. And then after a while, I've developed other friends that I go to, and like I went to one today. I was like, hey, can I ask you like your honest opinion? I literally said to him, I need you to be as brutally honest with me as if I was asking you about a Zack Snyder movie. Because I like those movies, and he does not. And he goes, "Oh, okay, we're going there, are we?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I need your honest opinion." Snyder cut forever. So, but there are going to be times when you just need someone to lean on, pun intended. For those who know the song, again, I'm old, but it's good because when you're alone, it sucks. Because you're like, I feel so alone, but I think we have not been that way for the comics community in many years. So, and even now, I'm still meeting people. I'm like, oh hey Todd, yeah, I'll happily help you with this. I'm like, great, okay then, let's do this. So.
That's fabulous. I mean, so has he helped you on everything, or is it just writing, or does he talk about how to do Kickstarter stuff better?
He actually doesn't do Kickstarters, to my knowledge. He did
okay.
one, but that was for an anthology, so he was like only like a small part of it. He mainly guided me on the writing aspect because that's his forte.
Okay. Are you mostly self-taught on Kickstarter? I know I kind of asked this earlier,
right.
But specifically Kickstarter.
I was self-taught at first. Then I got advice from various people about like, hey, look at other Kickstarters and see what they do, and what can you change here, what can you do there, and that helped influence like my prices. Like I offer like the $3 digital comic because I know that's a very easy thing to do. A lot of people do that, and then like getting drawn into the comic that used to be $100, then 75, and then 50 because I'm like, I'd rather just charge people a little. I don't need to push it that much. Although there is going to be a special tier for getting drawn in next time that you guys might want to check out. I won't spoil it, but it's going to be much different from before. But
I love it.
Yeah,
I love that you drew my character with. I think you gave him 2 swords, and that makes me incredibly happy because I actually know how to use 2 swords.
I got 2 swords right there. I got the master sword on my wall. I got swords. So not laser swords, just swords, but still. But yeah,
those will work just fine.
Yeah. And again, I am by no means a Kickstarter expert, but I can also say that between home, 10,000 miles in Tokyo, I have had 13 straight successful Kickstarters, and I can hold on to that because I've built a fan base. I have milked that fan base, for lack of a better term. And
it's what you do.
Yeah, you have to. And I've had people tell me, hey, Todd, I've fallen off. That's why I'm not supporting you right now. I'm like, that's fine. And then I'm trying to build it up between my newsletter and maybe hiring a marketing person, which I'll probably do for Crusader Mysteries, and just go from there. So you're always learning, always learning.
Absolutely. Let me ask you another question regarding maybe some inspiration that you take.
Okay.
You've mentioned video games once or twice. Yeah. Do you consider yourself a gamer, or do you just play video games?
You do see the Eevee plushie right there, right?
I do. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
well,
Pokemon's own thing though. So.
Eevee. Okay. No, I'm a huge gamer. I've been a gamer since I was 4 years old. My first game was Wario Blast on the Game Boy. I have been a Nintendo fanboy, born, bred, and mushroom fed, as I like to say. I was a PlayStation gamer until the PlayStation 3 came out because I ain't paying $600 for a console. Sorry, Sony. And never got an Xbox. I've played it before, but usually like demos or with friends. Mainly a Nintendo stan. I have my Switch literally right over there. I'm enjoying Splatoon all weekend. Go Team Love. And if you're Team Money or Fame, you suck. And you know it.
Shots fired.
Shots fired. The kinds of games I like to play, I love RPGs the most. Like, and shock because they have story. They have really good.
Yep, that's kind of where I was leading with this part. Yeah.
And
so let's talk about the games you play and why you like them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, start with Nintendo first. My favorite Nintendo franchise, which might surprise some people, is actually Fire Emblem, because wait for it, they have story and it's the great fantasy characters, Ike forever, and ironically, they're about to get a Death Battle presentation with Dimitri from Three Houses. Great pick, but I love how they've handled that, the different ways that they've taken the fantasy storylines and everything. Pokemon is also my favorite. Not so
Do you
much.
have a favorite generation or region?
Probably Johto. I've always been a fan of Johto.
Hoenn for me. Hoenn forever.
Phrasing. Phrasing. So, no, but Johto Hoenn was good. If we're being honest here, though, too much water.
I mean, Team Aqua's got to have something.
This is true. This is true. A lot of people were laughing at that joke, I'm sure. But no, Pokemon's been great. I've been Gen 1. I got Pokemon Blue was my first one. I got it in my stocking at Christmas. My first color game technically was Pokemon Silver. That was a great birthday. And I've also played Legend of Zelda. Tears of the Kingdom was great. Loved how they handled the game mechanics there. Recently, I've been doing a lot of PC gaming. Mass Effect. Oh my gosh, the Mass Effect trilogy. 95% a perfect trilogy. We all know where their 5% is. That ending.
Right. And talk about, I mean, Mass Effect is story. You build the story of Mass Effect.
Which made the ending suck even more because the story didn't matter. But like,
yeah, talk about Hunter x Hunter again. All that lead up to a complete just 90-degree turn to something else.
But like replaying it, I hadn't replayed it in years. I bought the Legendary Edition when it was on a Steam sale, and replaying it and like enjoying like the character arcs and the depth that BioWare, like OG BioWare, did in like making the Turians, the Quarians, the Krogan, their backstories, their histories, the Asari, and then you jump into Mass Effect 2 and you get to meet all these great characters who are so nuanced. And then Mass Effect 3, where it's like all coming together and everything's falling apart, and you're seeing, you actually, if you really think about it, you don't get Shepard story until 3, but they make it worth it with his PTSD that he's got going on because of the kid, not the Star Child. We don't want to talk about that. But everything just feels so alive and beautiful, and you want to save everyone, which is again why this ending sucks so bad. It's like, hey, let's just randomly make everyone synthetic, or don't, and kill all the synthetics, or don't, and just never mind. But when BioWare was firing on all cylinders with that franchise, it was like one of the best things ever. And I remember being so pumped for 2 and for 3, and like, who's your favorite squad members, and how can you hate Tali? But then you got Rex, and Garrus is for excellent, and Ashley's a racist, and she always will be. And Ashley sucks. I made that joke on my own podcast, and my co-hosts go, "Yeah, she does. She really does." I'm like, so little growth there. But those are the kinds of games that really like grip me and like inspire me to do more, because I'm like, that's the peak. When you have like such that big universe that everyone says like, oh yeah, we got to help out the Quarians, and here's the Krogan because they rock, and Garrus as Archangel is great, and blah blah blah. And when everything fell apart after that, it made you appreciate the trilogy even more up until the ending, because like that was the peak. Or Batman, Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. We don't talk about Night. That's another example of the story with the gameplay and feeling like you're really Batman. I love those games. And right now with Final Fantasy VII Remake, like a lot of people latched on to that because it was a modern retelling of the classic story. And I never got to beat the original game for various reasons, so I'm enjoying this, and I like how they fleshed out Tifa and Aerith and even Cloud, and seeing how things are progressing. So I love just seeing the creativity of video games and then how it inspires me to with my own stories. So, like I said, that Crusader Mystery, no, not Crusader Mysteries. One of my novel series, Choice of Thorns, was actually inspired by a Square Enix game called Triangle Strategy, which was very Game of Thrones esque, but had its own feeling and flair. And I'm like, I like this dynamic between these two characters. What if I could take it in this direction? And then boom, there's your story idea. So, video games are a huge part of my life, and I'm so glad for that.
Absolutely. I ask anyone who writes, I always ask them if they play TTRPGs, tabletop role-playing games.
Okay, this one might surprise you. I actually don't. My only experience, and this actually kind of ties back to the comic origins that I had. It's not that I was never interested. I'd never had someone to play with. My only experience playing tabletop was I worked at a video game company called Volition, who was the team behind Saints Row franchise. I worked at their company for a summer on Saints Row the Third, great game. And one of the guys I worked with, his name was Joseph Wolf, I believe, and he was a top tier dungeon master. Like, he was a guy you would call to do conventions because he was that good. He would brag about that to me, including one time when they actually forgot to call him, and so they're waiting for him to show up, and you didn't invite me, so I'm not there. That was a great story. But he was like, I used to work through my lunches because I just wanted to be that guy who was always focused on work. And he goes, Todd, you really need to take a break. Why don't you play tabletop with us? I'm like, I don't have dice. I don't know how to do it. And he goes, I'll teach you. I'm like, okay. So we played there was actually a superhero tabletop we did, and then there was a barbarian tabletop that we did. It was fun, and I could see the potential of it. If I had a group today, I probably could get into it. I think I still have my dice over there on my dresser, but it was not as much as an influence as probably it could have been, just because I didn't have that crew with me. And especially when I was growing up, you didn't really talk about D&D. You talked
Right.
about TCGs, like the trading card games I had. But even then I still only had limited friends to play with. But D&D was not as influential and as popular now as it was back then. Like, we look at Baldur's Gate 3 and how that game is blown up.
Right.
So, and props to Larian Studios for making an actual functioning, non-super buggy game with lots of options, and, completeness. What a concept. So, I know, right? But
no, absolutely. Yeah. No, I always find that interesting to ask writers if they play games like this, because some writers love to be DMs. Some don't like it because writers tend to have an idea of what they want to happen, and players
I don't
are lovely monkey wrenches in that machine.
I don't know if I would be a good DM, and I know that might.
I figured as much.
Oh, really? You figured as much?
Siri's got an opinion. The robot's got an opinion.
Hey, Siri, do you have an opinion? No, okay, darn.
Of course not. Yeah, of course not.
Hey, Siri, please don't take over the world. I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. Oh my god, it's happening! But I don't know if I would be a good DM. Not because I'm not creative enough, but it's just the idea of I am plotting your adventure as you play it. That would honestly be a new experience for me. Now, yes, in its own way, writers are the DMs of their own universe because they're creating everything as they go, but they're not having that interaction with live people, as you said, to throw the monkey wrench into the plan. When I was playing those tabletop games, it was fun seeing how the dice screwed with everything. Because I remember with the hero one, I had okay, I'm gonna do the really epic attack. It's gonna be so awesome. I roll a 5, and it just no damage to the dude. I'm like, crap. And then I get put through a van, almost knocked unconscious. And I'm trying to think of how my character would interact with all these other heroes. It was really weird, but again, it was my first time, so it's definitely an experience that I wouldn't mind getting back into. I definitely don't know if I would be a good DM, though. I definitely would need to have more player experience before I dove into the DM experience, because I, like you said, would have this beautiful idea, like, oh, they're gonna enjoy this, we're gonna go to this way, and then something happens. I'm like, okay, never mind. Let's try something
Right.
else.
Yep. You ball it up, toss it. Yeah, and there's tricks to that. Either I've had DMs who they're trying, more or less trying to get the players to go. It's like, oh, there's this, people gone missing in this town in the east, and they hear about this. Like, oh, we're gonna go west. They just take the city and just put it there instead, like things like that. Or I always picture it as that scene in Atlantis when they come across this like giant ornate pillar, right? And Milo is like, "Oh, this craftsmanship and workmanship. This is like this dates back. Yeah, this must have taken hundreds, thousands of years." Boom, boom. Yeah, and look, I made a bridge. It took like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
That's basically what being a DM versus what the players will do.
I love that you just referenced Atlantis: The Lost Empire. I love that movie. Gold.
Disney's like,
it's like
gold, and nobody talks about it.
It's like, then boom, no Chinese laundry. It was like a sign from God. I had found my purpose. It's like, yeah, I love that movie. Michael J. Fox, man, he was great. It was like, oh, such a good movie. So
yes, all-star cast, really. Everyone in that was somebody famous. Oh, but yeah, so that just, it's so fun to learn about. Like, once you become a fan of somebody, I want to learn about their influences. Like, I bought the I really do harp on Avatar.
Yeah, we did a whole episode.
It wasn't
enough
to get it.
Let's do another one.
Right.
Come on.
Honestly. But so I one of my happy places is I bought the art book for the Last Airbender series.
Yeah.
They have an art book.
Yeah.
And it talks about their influences, and you see the concept art and all the sketches.
I do like concept art.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I should get you this book. You'd love it. But it has all that stuff, and it's just so great and it has their spiel, their stuff in it of like, oh yeah, this was Brian Konietzko will be like, oh yeah, I basically stole this guy from Studio Ghibli. And that's fine. Yeah. Steal like an artist. Absolutely.
It's like this: a smart man borrows, a wise man steals.
Yeah. Yeah. Or Commander Zhao was based off of his voice actor.
Jason
Isaacs. Didn't know. Yeah, Jason Isaacs. They didn't know. They were like, yeah, if it could be like Jason Isaacs, that'd be great. And then their casting director was like, well, what if I just call Jason Isaacs?
I forgot Jason Isaacs was in there. I really did, because when you're, let's see, how old was I? Let's just say teens when Avatar came out. The last thing you're thinking about is, oh, who were the voices? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That Zuko was Rufio from Hook.
Right.
Or that Sokka's mentor, the swordsman, was Robert Patrick. And and of course Jason Isaacs as Zhao. Actually, when I was at C2E2 and Dante Busca was there, he was talking about how him and Isaacs went to like a film theater festival thing or something, and it was an independent film festival, and they were both there for a various project, and they kept getting pulled to the side, not because of the projects that they were doing in there, but because both of them were on Avatar.
Absolutely.
And so Jason pulled Zuko to Bosco to the side and goes, hey, this Avatar thing is blowing up. Like, I'm getting asked by that all the time. Like, there you go. So.
There it is. And there's so many. I always joke that show has more Easter eggs than Jesus Christ, because there's just so much in it. Serena, I think one of the Williams sisters, I think Serena Williams is a voice actress in it.
Really?
Yep.
She's a prison guard. She's the one who feeds Iroh when he's in prison.
She was really excited about it.
Yeah.
Really? I did not know that.
Yep.
That's cool.
She was like visiting Avatar Studio, or she was visiting Nickelodeon at the time, and they're just like,
we did a whole episode so he could get all this out of his system.
Yeah, and yet here I am. I am the trigger. You're welcome.
Everything's a trigger for it.
Todd the Trigger Black.
True. Well, that's and it's such a good. I mean, they did such a good job.
They did.
It just, you can reference it for any.
Yeah.
It's one of the few shows I can watch over and over and over and over.
I did a binge years ago, and I found this site that had it on for free, so totally legal. And it was just like, okay, let's just see if it's as good as I remember. Now, I'll admit, parts of season 1 were a bit much. Like, for example, they really, really harped on the fact that Aang and Katara were going to get together. Gee, no kidding. Like, the first 6 episodes, Aang is like hitting on Katara like all the gosh dang time. gonna make a Korra joke here, but I won't. But like once we got past that, once we really started moving, it was amazing. Of course, the Zuko arc is like one of the best arcs in any medium period,
Yeah.
and taking
Let me.
all the
Okay,
twists and turns.
I'm gonna ask you. I'm gonna ask you as a writer. Why do you think that? Like, you're right. First of all, you're correct.
Obviously, I said it. Of course,
Right.
I'm correct. No, okay.
But in your thoughts,
Okay.
why is Zuko's arc stand out?
Because when you really think about, let's just call it the bad guy arc, there's only two ways it can go, or so we think. Step one, they're the bad guy from beginning to end, and like say like a video game bad guy, like a Sephiroth. He's the bad guy. You're gonna fight him at the end. He's the end boss. You're gonna get to him eventually, and that's fine. You could put nuance into it. You could have fun into it, which they did with Sephiroth. But in the end, he's still just a bad guy, right? And then there's the redemption arc, which is we think he's the bad guy. We start to learn more about him. He learns more about him. He or she learns more about themselves, and then they slowly come to our side. When you look at Zuko, he did not have a straight path. He was the bad guy. I am here to get my honor back, to prove my worth to my father. Pursued the Avatar for a couple arcs, has the chance for redemption, takes the chance, reneges on it, and betrays his uncle, the only support in his life. Let's just be blunt. The only support outside of his mother in his life. Drops him to get power back. Then feels bad about it and starts to have redemption once again while still trying to keep power. So he's like, I can't pick a side here. And then eventually he commits and becomes the Fire Lord that we need him to be, and the member of Team Avatar that we need him to be. It was so non-linear that when the betrayal happened in season 2, well before the age of the internet really took off. If we had social media back then, everyone would have been like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe Zuko did that! Like, why did Zuko betray how like that? Like, how dare you?" But even like amongst my friends, we couldn't believe that he had done that because it was such an impactful moment. With the whole, here he is. He's like, do I hit the Avatar? Do I hit Azula? Like, what do I do? And then he made the wrong choice, and he owned that.
And it's deep. It's deep because sorry, no, I'm just
Please
fanboying
go.
with you. But like but it's deep because, again, I'm a psychology guy, and abusers often returned, or abusees, the abused often returned to the abusers.
It's true, and that's what happened.
That's exactly what he did.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he did.
And it's the intertwined storytelling because he goes back because of Azula. So the enemy he needs to defeat is not his father, it's Azula. So they tie that back in. That's when he has to beat. That's his trigger, is their relationship. So it gets all tied in.
Yeah, he knows his father's fucked up.
Yeah, so because his first redemption, he's like, I don't need my father. Then she comes in and it's like, oh, this is actually where the dynamic comes in.
My father used to say that my sister was born lucky and that I was lucky to be born. And that obviously weighed on him because Azula in one season does more than he did like his entire life. Like, let's just be honest here. And that weighed on him, which helped him turn. And for a while,
she did in a few weeks. She did in a few weeks what the Fire Nation couldn't do in 100 years.
She's that good and that twisted. But I digress.
Right.
So, the day Azula graced your Earth Kingdom was the greatest day of your life. But for me, it was Tuesday. Man service. So, but no,
absolutely. No, and I love asking writers about stuff like this, like tabletop RPGs, where you get to write and do a thing in that, or stuff like other great writing and discuss why it's great in the lens of a writer and why do you think it's, because I'm a fan. I love storytelling. I'm not a writer. I'm just not.
It's all right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm not an
artist.
I'm a consumer.
I can do stick figures and shape animals, but trust me, when I see a good piece of art, I go, "Dang, that's a good piece of art."
Oh, that was something. I know we're running out of time slightly, but
slightly. We've been talking for like 2+ hours. I didn't even know how long we were going to be going. So whatever.
2 hours is sometimes 2 hours is usually.
Yeah, the software will start getting finicky at 2 hours. We found so there's like a built-in time limit for our stuff.
Final segment. Let's go.
Yeah.
So you're a comic book writer that doesn't draw. Now, obviously, comic books, it's you don't do it all. Some people do, but some people do, and they usually do it pretty well. But you don't draw. So why? So you wanted to make comics, and you just had to find artists.
Yeah.
Like what was the process for that? Like, It's new to me.
I got lucky. I'm not afraid to say that. My first couple artists, including my main guy Alex Garcia, I found on this now defunct website called cghub.com. And I just posted a thing like, "Hey, I need artists. Who's up to helping me?" And I found two guys, Engchi Chua and Alex. Engchi had to drop out after issue number 0, which people still praise as one of my best because of the art style, ironically enough. And after he dropped, I was like, "Hey, Alex, do you think you can do all of it?" And he goes, "Yeah, I can." So I've been working with him ever since. I found multiple people, including Lon Buvan, Beth Varney, and others on Facebook. I found a few people on Twitter, but I've also had lots of problems with bots on Twitter. I've also been trying to reach out to people on Instagram, asking friends like, "Hey, do you know an artist who might be available?" I did a lot for Crusader Mysteries, and there's a lot of ways, but it is hard to find the person that can A, fit your price range, and B, fits the style that you are looking for. And that's why, like for Tokyo or for Crusader, I spent sometimes months looking for the right artist because I didn't just want any artist to do it. I wanted someone who I felt could do my vision in a meaningful way. So
That's perfect. Yeah. And you seem satisfied with the result, more or less.
more 90. I'll go Mass Effect here. 95%. 95%.
Hey, that was enough to give you Mass Effect.
This is true. This is true. Just stop right before you go back to Earth, and you're a happy capper. So.
Once again, Earth sucks. All right.
Yeah.
So
okay, I want to comment that really quick. If I was to
do.
get one major story insult to Mass Effect outside of Ashley being a dumb racist, they really harp that humanity is the end all be all. Like they really harp that, oh, you should just listen to humanity. Humanity has no flaws. You should bring us in more. We've totally done nothing wrong. Like, you're human. Of course you've done something wrong. And it's just, all 3 games have it to where like, oh yeah, if you listen to humanity. And then of course, then Cerberus happens, and it's like, yeah, this is why we don't listen to humanity. So just saying.
Let me tell you about Fallout.
You don't have to. You know why? Because war never changes.
And that's why I'm a 40K fan. There's only war.
Well, only if you hammer it home.
Har. All right, so our software is going to yell at us.
Okay.
Todd, one more time, tell us where folks can find you and interact.
Well, aside from the future Avatar breakdown episode part 2 that I will no doubt be a part of, you can find me on...
You two could do that on your own.
Okay. So let's talk about Zutara. No. You can find me on Twitter at Guardians_comic. You can find me on Facebook. Find me through my personal profiles. Look for Todd Black. Look for the hair. I'm also on Instagram to a lesser degree at Guardians_comic. I'm going to try and do better on that. And I'm also on a Global Comics, where you can find most of my series. You just look me up under Black Magic Wolf Productions, which is my self-publishing company. So that should be good.
Yeah. Folks can find the many branches of where you are from there. That's perfect.
Oh, and I guess we never mentioned it. We are in issue 7. We mentioned it in passing, so him and I are drawn in issue 7.
Yes.
So if you're a fan of us, make sure to read through Tokyo Detective, which in my case, I need the next issue now because things are getting juicy. So
you'll like what happens tonight. I can pretty much guarantee it. So you won't see the ending coming. I guarantee it. So suspense.
Fantastic.
All right.
Let's leave it on that cliffhanger because that's perfect.
All right. Thank you for coming on, man.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it. Love the stuff.
I appreciate your support. Keep rocking what you're doing, and keep annoying him about Avatar. So
it's good.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
I thought I could get it out of him. Apparently not.
Nope. This Hotman will forever flame me out. I can't.
Oh, he has to keep talking to me about Avatar. That's rough, buddy.